Let's analyze a painting this time. This is a William Herbert Thornton. He's one of my favorite artists. His work was absolutely brilliant. He was a supreme designer. His work was very stylized, especially towards the latter half of his life. But in this painting, you can clearly see two things: organic form and structured form. So let's start with the more organic form. You see a very obvious proportional shape here, and the relationship of that in regards to this, even down to the negative space between these. The background areas here are very well thought out, very designy. This element up here that creates the illusion of depth off into the background and balance left to right. There's a lot more leeway in terms of drawing exaggeration in organic form oftentimes than there is structured form. He started with a two-dimensional shape here clearly, and by establishing a highlight, a midtone, and a shadow, you can clearly see form in this thing. In other words, three-dimensional shape. Same thing over here. Now listen, when you're drawing organic form like a bush or a tree or something along those lines, the ability to depart from absolute accuracy is a lot more forgiving than something like an animal. If I don't make this bush the relationship of height to width just exactly right, it's okay. It can still read as a bush. But you start getting over into a structured form or measured form like you see in this elk here, and it's, boy, I tell you what, there's a lot more to be considered in terms of absolute accuracy. So think about that. If you're not a particularly good draftsman, you might want to address those issues through life drawing sessions or that kind of thing. But everything in this elk is beautifully drawn, all the way down to the negative space of the legs relative to the leg itself. All of that is thought out. All of it is measured and has to be accurate, and it's a whole different game than just loading a brush and having at a sagebrush. You can depart from reality a bit there in ways that you can't when you're dealing with the structured form of a barn or an animal or a human figure. I'd like to analyze another painting here, and I feel a little bit funny about this because it's an Edgar Payne, and he was one of the greats. But I've looked at this painting many times and tried to figure out exactly where the focal point is. And I come up with two different options. This giant mass of trees over to the right, and this more lyrical, beautifully drawn tree on the left. You also have right here a structure, human interest, that oftentimes really demands attention. The reason that one doesn't jump out too much is it's the same value as what's back there, so it kind of blends in. And the other thing is you have this trail that sort of leads in. But what if we were to go ahead and just for fun, don't tell Edgar I did this, identified the horizon line, which you clearly see there. And then, like I said earlier about those farm scenes, if we move the focal point, or I'm sorry, the vanishing point near where we wanted our focal point to be, then those vanishing lines will reinforce that. So, that could be that road that's leading in, the mass of the grass as it snakes back into the painting, but you see how it sort of reinforces that area as a point of interest. If we moved it over to these larger trees here and then move the vanishing lines back to that, you see how it reinforces that. If we want to move more to the middle of the painting, you can see what it does. So the point of all this is, once you've identified what your focal point is going to be, try to allow that vanishing point to reinforce that area, to force the viewer to move into or look at that area. Even if it's really subtle, it's still a great tool at your disposal for reinforcing your focal point. So the elk in the Dutton painting we just looked at clearly illustrate the importance of accuracy in terms of proportional drawing. Sometimes when you get into areas like this, this is a fairly common range, the San Juans in Colorado, you're probably going to want to get your drawing pretty accurate, okay? Now, in this hill, it's not as important. In the elk in that painting, absolutely important. So just keep that in mind. I had mentioned earlier that the majority of the problems I see relate to linear perspective. But that's within our chosen genre, the landscape. You start getting into figure painting and you move away from accurate proportion, say the head to the torso to a leg, then you're going to be in deep trouble. These are really fun images. These illustrate how you can use the horizon line or a pathway to reinforce a focal point. If you look at this, the lead and the mass, this beautiful shape of this, it's almost like a pathway or a river that take you right into that tractor there. Okay, the drawing of all this it has to be believable, and it has to relate to that horizon line back here in order to work. But you see, once it's down, you really can start directing the viewer's eye where you want them to go. The problem here is this tractor way out on the edge of the canvas, nearly to the edge of the canvas, almost creates a tangent. And it would be much more comfortable from a design standpoint if it were placed over here. You still have this directional lead in. You have a comfortable balance left to right, foreground to background with that tractor, and you've really reinforced your center of interest, your focal point. So keep that in mind. Here, we're just flat out using obvious perspective lines that are taking you right into this building. Again, I mentioned a moment ago, human interest, the glare and the high key quality of that roof line from a value standpoint jumps out. But all these lines here are really very quickly taking you into that point right there, and it's really reinforcing it as a point of interest. Now, if these lines were to go over here, were to be pointing over here, that would distract from this building. If this building were to be over here, then you'd have a left to right, sort of back and forth with your viewer's eye that would create confusion. So think about when you're laying out your painting and creating depth through linear perspective, about moving it if you need to reinforce a focal point or a solid center of interest within your painting. I want to visually reinforce the idea I threw your way of moving the tractor to a more comfortable position within the format here. And again, that's something I'd really like you folks to do, is have the courage to move elements around in your painting if it makes for a better painting. So if we move that tractor to the spot I referenced earlier, you can see how much more comfortable, if you will, the design is. But again, the larger issue is how we can use this mass to move you right in to that little bit of human interest, that point of interest there.
Hi, my name is Matt Smith. One of the primary goals of this online course is to give folks the opportunity to study with me for a full year at their convenience, on their own time frame. It's not always easy to block out a week or more of time to travel to a distant location for the purpose of studying with an artist of choice. Allowing oneself to study as their schedule permits creates a more relaxed atmosphere, which in turn opens the mind to learning. This is an opportunity I really wish I had in my early years. The course begins with an introductory module covering the basic consideration of tools, equipment, studio arrangement, lighting, the importance of indoor versus outdoor time, photography as a tool, and much more. This first module will set the tone for the remaining modules, which will dive more deeply into the basics of drawing, value, design, and color. In the remaining 4 modules, I'll discuss why these basics are important, how to identify them, and in return, how to use them not only to analyze your chosen subject, but how to use them to create a blueprint for building your painting. It is so important to train your mind to see and think as an artist rather than someone who just documents what's in front of them. The way to do this is by understanding these fundamentals and applying them to the subject at hand. In other words, see by way of the basics, line, shape, value, etc., rather than all the physical components that make up the finished scene, like twigs, pebbles, and leaves. I'll then reinforce these concepts with both unedited visuals, photographs, and finished paintings that support the idea at hand. I'll then complete a demo of a subject that represents the particular fundamental addressed in each module. I'll also include a variety of photographic images for student use. Participants will also have access to me throughout the year by way of a private Facebook group. You'll be able to contact me with questions related to areas of difficulty or whatever you may be working on and want to discuss. This one-on-one time is where we can really fine-tune areas of interest for you. Thank you, and I really hope you can join me.